Show. Over the next 90 minutes, we set the stage for today's Penn State football game. The Penn State Tailgate Show is sponsored by
W.R. Hickey Beer Distributor, the Dalton Group at Morgan Stanley, Big Valley Cabinets, Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships, First Citizens Community Bank, the Student Bookstore, Stalker Chevrolet, your Cigar Den and Monte Cristo Lounge, the Penn State All Sports Museum, Ben Franklin Technology Partners, Beer Belly's Beverage, Metzler Forest Products and Landscape Center, Joel Confer Toyota and BMW, Joel Confer Quality Pre-Owned, Center Care Inc., the Penn State Bookstore, Lion Country Kia, CSL Plasma, the Tavern Restaurant, Bobby Rahal Honda, Center County Recycling and Refuse Authority, BBCI Allen Mechanical and Electrical, Parkcrest Terrace, the End Zone Show and Sports Club, Confer's Jewelers, and I-99 Antiques.
Now, here are your hosts, Zach Seyko and Jason Lord.
On the campus of Penn State University, Happy Valley, it is Penn State and Ohio State, number 2 versus number 13. Aeneas, you and I here live on site. Jason back in the studio here on ESPN Radio State College, and everyone's here to see us.
Everybody.
This whole crowd is here for us today.
No doubt. It has nothing to do with Fox.
That Fox show or whatever that is over there, no.
I don't even know who
Wendy's,
is.
no. Nobody.
Who are they playing today?
I don't. Yeah, who is Penn State playing today?
I haven't checked the schedule. I'm not sure. I have no idea.
Jason, thanks for joining us on the show from the studio today. Aeneas Hawkins here. I'm Zach Seyko, and we are previewing Penn State and Ohio State live in front of the Bryce Jordan Center outside of Beaver Stadium.
WQWK State College.
And Jason, we do have our legal ID there. Jason, your Phillies ended up winning last night. Let's start there with that real quick to get that out of the way.
How about it? Down 5-0. It's just been a resilient team all year, coming back, getting the big win. I felt like you take one game in Houston, you feel really good about it. They took game 1. Now you're really playing with house money now as the underdog, no doubt about it. And they get set for game 2 tonight, but it's huge because that crowd in Philadelphia, obviously this postseason's been incredible, and you're going to have 3 there.
Yeah, you're now guaranteed those 3 home games. But we are talking Penn State football. I thought that was important because here we are, Penn State and Ohio State, and the World Series comes to Pennsylvania. And this is one of the biggest games, honestly. Aeneas, I had some, even though it's a little cold, it's going to warm up to 60 after our show's over, so we got to stay bundled up and a little warm here. But I felt some energy coming into this game. Not the Michigan one, maybe because it was an away game, it was a little different. But there's this adrenaline rush for Ohio State today.
Yeah, certainly. Anytime you play at home, there's going to be a little bit more energy. But, the reality is the Penn State and Nittany Lions are facing off with Ohio State. Fans here know the significance of this game. You don't have to say it. The players know it. The coaches know it. And it's a big opportunity for everybody involved.
We'll start with this. Urban Meyer makes his anticipated return to State College. He's in Happy Valley. Oh, for different reasons, though. He's no longer the head coach at Ohio State, but he's over here just about 5-10 feet from us with Fox Big Noon Kickoff, and their show gets underway in the next hour. So you have us here to preview before Fox goes live, which is, of course, we are the opening act for the headline, I guess.
No doubt about it. I'll tell you what, you're way more handsome than Urban Meyer anyway, man.
Oh, well, thank you.
Here soon.
Thank you.
No
Jason, you're back in the studio with the Face for Radio.
You're darn right.
But
we behave a lot better than Urban Meyer does.
He was greeted with a sea of boos, jeers over with the Penn State fans that are out here early that are lined up. They saw his face and they booed his face.
There you go.
He got a nice Happy Valley welcome for the second time. Very anticipated return. Ohio State is the matchup today. We will preview everything, but let's start with this. Penn State beats Minnesota in the whiteout game 45-17. Jason, Your instant reaction from that game, because I thought that was a game Penn State would win handedly. They did. I didn't give them enough credit. I thought they'd score about 30 points or so. They ended up scoring 45. So was that just Minnesota's that bad, or Penn State was able to correct things going into the whiteout game?
I think it's a combination of both. I thought they corrected things really in-game. Obviously, we'll get into this game as it goes on, but I think the start of that game hurt them a little bit. But I thought they were able to correct that. They kind of had that redemption factor of really proving that they had to show something against Minnesota. They knew going in, with Morgan being out, that they weren't going to throw the ball effectively, and really didn't. Minnesota wasn't. And I thought they adjusted well to that. So I think it's a combination of both. I thought it was Minnesota really being a team that is struggling considerably. Even with Tanner Morgan in there, I still think they were struggling. But from Penn State perspective, I thought they bounced back pretty well in that game. Really, second half was very strong. I thought they clicked on all cylinders, made the necessary adjustments. I think it's a combination of both. Minnesota's got a lot of work to do, but I thought Penn State redeemed themselves very well last week, Sean Clifford especially.
Yeah, after Sean Clifford had... like Urban Meyer had being introduced, had boos, had jeers, greeted him. And Aeneas, I think we should discuss that topic there, because Sean Clifford is stone cold, really, to go through that and then to come out. He threw the early interception that warranted more boos. Well, I don't know if it necessarily warranted them, but he was getting booed either way. And then he turns around after that interception, 295 yards, 4 touchdowns, clean game all the way through, and we got to see a little bit of Drew Aller in the fourth quarter. So if you're Sean Clifford, go into the mind of Sean Clifford for me and what he's thinking, if he's even processing that, because I imagine he blocks that out.
Yeah, I mean, to an extent, at this level, you got to be a competitor of some sort. Sean Clifford is human just like the rest of us, so he hears the boos, he hears the jeers, but at the same time, you spend 6 years in college football, you learn how to operate like a pro. You don't get too high or too low based on how the fans feel about you. You got to process, and you, at the end of the day, have a team that's depending on you to go execute no matter how you're feeling.
And Sean Clifford was Big Ten Offensive Player of the Week. Big Ten Offensive Player of the Week. And I'm stealing that one from James Franklin, because he did just that in his press conference when he was not shy about making sure that everyone knew that Sean Clifford was the Big Ten Offensive Player of the Week. All right, that's out of the way. But Ohio State is playing in front of Penn State and in front of a Penn State crowd for the first time since 2018. Are they going to be ready? Big Noon Kickoff is making its Happy Valley debut. It's the Stripe-Out game. There's a pregame flyover, and Hall of Famer LeVar Arrington is going to be recognized at today's game as well. He's got his own 10, actually. Aeneas, did you get to say hi to him before?
I got to say hi to LeVar Arrington.
How's he doing?
He's doing well. I had to cut the line, man. That dude's a legend here. I got to play with another Sticks, Micah Parsons, but they say LeVar Arrington back in his day was every bit as good, if not better. So definitely good to see LeVar.
Well, Jason, and you had that privilege of watching him. What was LeVar Arrington's presence on the field when he was here at Penn State?
One of the two greatest athletes at Penn State I've ever had the chance to see. Saquon Barkley and LeVar Arrington are the two biggest that I had the chance to see. He was an absolute dominant force on that team. Everybody remembers the Troy Polamalu leaps. The LeVar leap came before that. Yeah, this guy absolutely time plays so perfectly on defense. He was an absolute force. Without a doubt, athletically, the best defensive player I ever saw at Penn State. Not necessarily completely the best defensive player, but in terms of an athlete, I never saw somebody better in the defensive side of the ball than LeVar Arrington. I go back to the game against Arizona, the old Pigskin Classic. That was number 3 Penn State, number 4 Arizona. And just the dominance of that game and how much he was around the ball that entire game, it really set the tone in that 1999 season through the first start of that year to how good he was and just how dominant he was. Obviously, first-round pick. And there were few that played the linebacker position athletically better than LeVar Arrington.
LeVar Arrington will be recognized on the field in Beaver Stadium between the first and second quarter. Arrington is going to be inducted into the National Football Hall of Fame, or into the Hall of Fame for college football at the 64th National Football Foundation Annual Awards Dinner. That is on December 6th of this year. Arrington is the 26th member of Penn State football to be elected to the College Hall of Fame. Quarterback Kerry Collins was the most recent inductee in 2018. We need more of those.
Absolutely need more of those. Those are the type of things that are a good look in recruiting. When you're a young guy and you come in here and you see guys like Kerry Collins, you see guys like LeVar Arrington, the Saquon Barkleys, it is natural for a 16, 17-year-old kid to come in here and wonder if they can do it too. So definitely love to see it.
It's not a whiteout, it is the stripe-out game, and I've kind of talked about this between some of the shows I do on ESPN Radio State College, some of the podcasts I do, and just in passing casually. The reason this is not the whiteout game is because Fox has taken this game, they chose this game, and they wanted to put it at noon, okay? That's just their primetime slot for everyone out there. You can let them know how you feel about that if that's the case. But that is why Minnesota was selected as the whiteout game, because Penn State wanted the true atmosphere of the whiteout at night when it is best suited, and not really for a noon kickoff. So they thought the stripe out would be appropriate here, so I hope that intimidates the Buckeyes today. But looking ahead, the 2023 schedule was announced now that there were all these changes because we know the COVID-19 pandemic took over in 2020 and is still with us. And the college football had to make so many changes with the way the schedule was, not only in that year, but all the way through these next few years. And I think this is the final schedule. I think 2024 will be the final schedule that the Big Ten and college football have to make some adjustments to. But 2023, we know what Penn State is going to have on its schedule, and that's West Virginia, Delaware at Illinois, Iowa at Northwestern, UMass at Ohio State, Indiana at Maryland, Michigan, Rutgers at Michigan State. I think the most interesting part of that schedule, two things. One, Michigan's in November, so that puts into question, is the whiteout game going to be somebody else? Because Penn State will not play that whiteout game in November because if you're here, you know the weather. No so it's not going to be friendly. They want to play that in a nice environment, good, clean weather. So they like to do that in September or October. And then we saw Pat Kraft walking around, new athletic director, new vice president of intercollegiate athletics here at Penn State. He was not shy letting the Big Ten know that they messed up, putting Penn State on the road for the 8th consecutive season to open up Big Ten play. I don't know.
It's frustrating. If you look at other teams across the conference, nobody else is even close. I don't know how it keeps happening to Penn State. I'm not as sharp about this process. As a player, you don't spend a lot of time thinking about it, but you definitely feel the effects of it when you have to consistently open up Big Ten play in enemy territory.
And this is the 13th out of 14 seasons. Actually, there was one in there. They opened up Big Ten play at home in 2005. This is how bad it is, folks, how the Big Ten might be against Penn State. They are not hiding their hand, okay? 13 out of 14 seasons, and the only reason Penn State had that breakup in 2015 was because Rutgers was the opening game, but that was actually scheduled as a non-conference game before Rutgers was even in the Big Ten. Jason, is there bias by the Big Ten against Penn State?
It sure seems like it at times. And not only because of this schedule where football, we were playing 13 to 14. Look at the Big Ten basketball schedule. How many times Penn State plays a Saturday game at home? It doesn't happen often. So that's the other part that concerns me even more, and that's what makes us feel like, hey, this isn't an accident at some point here. 13 to 14 in football where you're literally starting the season in conference play on the road, and also the fact that I look at the basketball schedule, especially last year, a couple of years prior, you have Saturday home games, which are going to be your most popular home game for basketball, and you have one, maybe none, maybe two, and other teams have 8, 9. I think that's a concern for me, and it makes you feel like, yeah, there's some sort of bias. Are they doing it deliberately? Who knows? Are they doing it just pure coincidence? Maybe. But when you look at it on paper, it sure seems like there is a little bit of bias.
He is Jason Lord back in studio. Aeneas Hawkins to my right. I'm Zach Seyko. This is the Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships Penn State Tailgate Show on the campus of Penn State University. Outside of the Bryce Jordan Center and off to the side of Beaver Stadium. We are live on location. In this show, as always, we are going to go through the historical perspective, the coach's corner. We are also going to look at the injury report today, keys for both Penn State and Ohio State, around the Big Ten where we look across the conference. Welcome on our special celebrity guest today. That is Penn State grad and host of the Fan Morning Show of 93.7 The Fan out in Pittsburgh. Chris Mack joins us remotely, and we're going to predict some college football games, including the outcome of Ohio State and Penn State. Up next in the immediate, it is the historical perspective, and we will continue to break down Penn State's win over Minnesota next on ESPN Radio State College and 99.5 The Bus.
Recycling at Beaver Stadium is as easy as blue and white. All glass and plastic bottles and metal cans go into the blue bags, and paper and trash in the white bags. Be sure to leave the area like you found it, like a true Nittany Lion fan. Thanks for recycling from your friends at the Center County Recycling and Refuse Authority.
Buying your next new vehicle is easy at Lion Country Kia. If it's a new car you want, drive with confidence in a new Kia Telluride, Sorento, Sportage, Carnival, or Forte. Looking for a great used or certified pre-owned vehicle? Lion Country Kia has all kinds of makes and models in stock, including a large selection of certified pre-owned Kias, complete with great warranties too. View their complete inventory today at LionCountryKia.com. That's LionCountryKia.com. Or visit them on Drivable Street behind Sam's Club and State College.
Do you enjoy the warmth of a wood fire but don't have time to cut and split firewood? Then you need to call Metzler Forest Products, just 1 mile south of Reedsville. Metzler Forest Products sells assorted hardwoods in various lengths, and they also offer ready-to-burn, kiln-dried firewood that is seasoned, USDA certified, and is bug and pest free. Contact Metzler Forest Products today to arrange to pick up or have a load of firewood delivered right to your home. Call Metzler Forest Products at 717-667-3600. That's 717-667-3600, or visit MetzlerForestProducts.com.
Hey, man, want to get together, watch the game this weekend?
Yeah, dude. Just come on over. I got that huge TV.
Nah, let's go out. I know a place with even bigger TVs, plus free beer, and Central PA's finest adult entertainment.
Sounds like you want to go to the End Zone.
The End Zone. Come for the game, stay for the entertainment. Visit EndZoneShowClub.com or call to book your free shuttle.
Free beer available to anyone 21 older on the indoor beer patio, regardless of cover charge. Original ID is required.
What did head coach James Franklin have to say leading up to this week's game? Find out on Saturdays with the Coach's Corner during the Penn State Tailgate Show, sponsored by Ben Franklin Technology Partners.
Now, back to the Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships Tailgate Show on ESPN Radio 103.7 and 99.5 The Bus. 135 years of Penn State football and counting. 13 decades of classic Penn State games. 3 decades of games in the Big Ten.
Let's take a trip down memory lane with today's historical perspective.
Sponsored by the Penn State All Sports Museum. Visit the new I Am a Penn Stater World War II exhibit at the Penn State All Sports Museum. The Penn State All Sports Museum, located at the southwest corner of Beaver Stadium.
Penn State and Ohio State have some history between one another. This is the 38th time in program history that these two teams have met, and 21st time where both teams are ranked in the AP Top 25. Most recently, just last year, Penn State did lose 33-24 at Ohio State. Sean Clifford threw for 361 yards and a touchdown on 35 completions. Jahan Dotson recorded 11 receptions. Man, do I miss him. For 127 yards. Parker Washington, 9 catches for 108 yards. Jair Brown forced and recovered a fumble. Curtis Jacobs had 2 tackles for a loss, just to highlight a few performances. Both Penn State and Ohio State are ranked among top 10 programs in winning percentage and total victories in NCAA history. 4 of the top 10 winningest programs by total wins and winning percentage in NCAA history are from the Big Ten, as a matter of fact. Penn State sits number 7 on all-time victories with 915 and number 9 in winning percentage at 687. Okay, that's all great and dandy. The looking back historically, Penn State's gotten the best of Ohio State, but in the last 8 years, we all know this. James Franklin and this Penn State team are 1-7 against Ohio State, and I I don't like when people call it a fluke, but there's still a section of the fan base or people that just appreciate college football, and they say, look, Penn State had a blocked field goal. Who knows if they would have even won that Ohio State game had Marcus Allen and Grant Haley not come through in 2016.
I'm not a fan of that theory. I remember watching that game as a 16-year-old recruit, and that being a big factor in coming here for me. And, of course, they did block the field goal. It doesn't happen a lot, but special teams are another part of the game that absolutely are important. And I remember...
super reliable inside of 40.
No doubt. But, again, we looked at the D-line in that game. They got after J.T. Barrett all night long, specifically in the second half. And there were other factors that helped them win that game. And if we look back and reflect on that roster, there was NFL talent all over Penn State's football team. So I don't hear the whole fluke discussion, but, the last 8 years kind of speaks for themselves.
And even, this is a completely different tangent, but that 2017 team was built different.
Yes, they were.
They should have beat that Ohio State team back in 2017. They ended up losing by 1 point. Michigan State, that's a conspiracy theorist in me. That between the delay that happened and then they were fed pizza at halftime while Michigan State got to kick up on the sofas and relax and get stretched out, and they huddled Penn State all in this tight locker room and fed them bad food in between that weather delay. And so Michigan State comes out on top because Penn State really could have been in the college football playoff that year in 2017. Yep. But all those guys were back from that 2016 team that beat Ohio State. But now we have the deja vu aspect of it. 2016, you get run out of Ann Arbor. Michigan beats you down 49-10 in 2016. And then you have 41-17 here in 2022. Then you come home, you play Minnesota. It's a get-right spot. That one was an overtime game in 2016 and a better Minnesota team, I must add. But they won that game. Here, whiteout game, you beat the snot out of them. You run them out of Beaver Stadium, same thing. Now, there was Maryland in between in 2016. This time you jump right to Ohio State. But are we going to see that 2016 magic again 6 years later? Jason, is this team built for just that on a noon kickoff this time around?
I think they're a heavier underdog today. I think they are built to do something like that, but I think obviously coming into today, I think you need something like that to happen to me. I think you need to play near a perfect game and allow that to happen at some point, but I see the similarities in the sense that in 2016, that happened with Michigan, and then obviously the Minnesota game just propels the season completely. But I think every year is probably a little bit different. The personnel is different. But, yeah, there's similarities there, too. There's no question about it. But as far as, will something like that happen, I think Penn State coming into this game, granted, they were a heavy underdog in 2016. I think it's even bigger right now because it's just how explosive Ohio State has been. I compare this game right now to more so like that double overtime loss that they had against Ohio State where Bosa just completely backed into Christian Hackenberg, or the 2018 game where Ohio State was just unstoppable coming into that game with the late Dwayne Haskins at quarterback, and they really hadn't played a road game like they're playing at Beaver Stadium at that point, and Penn State obviously played them hard. They were 4th and 5 short of knocking them off that day. I compare the game more so to those two games than I do the 2016 season, just in this matchup with Penn State and Ohio State.
And that's just it. C.J. Stroud and company have not seen a true Beaver Stadium crowd. I don't care what time the kickoff's at. I think Paul Keels, I heard that Steve Jones had Paul Keels, the voice of Ohio State football, on his radio show here on ESPN Radio State College. And Paul Keels said, if this game was at 7 in the morning, we know that Penn State's crowd would be rocking. So it doesn't matter, 7, noon, 7 at night. Penn State's going to get up for this one, and we will preview Ohio State further in depth as we do have segments coming up. Coach's Corner is in just a moment. Let's get back to Penn State in Minnesota. 45-17, the Golden Gophers. I think even if Tanner Morgan had played in this game, it wouldn't have made a difference. But Penn State had all the big plays. We saw the tight ends. Oh, my gosh. The tight ends, Theo Johnson and Tyler Warren, they're still on the team. Well, they were injured to start the season, so I can understand having a slow start to build things up. And now they're on tape. They're factored in the game plan now, and Ohio State has to at least respect that where any of the three of them are like, man, they're not just in there to block anymore. Yep. They can be used in the passing, and we've known that all along, Aeneas.
Yeah, you knew those tight ends were capable of going down there and stretching the field. I think everybody did, and that's why it was so disappointing to see them neglected in the offensive scheme. But now, again, it's something that's strategically been put on film for Ohio State to have to look at and prepare for all week long. And hopefully what that translates into is more open running lanes, lighter boxes for Penn State to go operate their offense.
And Sean Clifford had a good day. We already addressed that. Big Ten Offensive Player of the Week. 295 passing yards, 4 touchdowns. The one early interception, it was a cold start. I was not worried in the slightest when it was 3-3, 10-3, and Penn State really wasn't out there convincingly. But I think this is important to point out. I've said this multiple times now, and everybody else will. Jason and Aeneas, you will both agree with me. Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen have completely changed this offense. Why the offense is able to operate the way it is because of these two 18-year-old running backs. Jason, how true is that case? Put it into perspective for us, how they've made this offense so much better.
Oh, they made it better because they made it more balanced. Not only because of the talent and how explosive they can be with one play, but because of the fact that you're able to have a balanced offense with the running game going the way it is. This was missing last year in a big way in this Penn State offense, whether it was offensive line, whether it was running backs, whatever it wasn't there. It's there now with Singleton and Allen. You have that explosiveness. You have the ability to run the football. You also have the ability to catch the pass out of the backfield that you haven't really had since about 2016, 2017. So it brings a lot of explosiveness. It brings a big difference to this offense. And yeah, it's a huge factor in the offense, mainly because it brings that balance that you've been missing the last year and a half.
As much as everyone wants to compare them to Saquon Barkley and Miles Sanders, this is a true dynamic duo that I would relate to more of a Journey Brown and a vintage Noah Cain, just because Journey Brown has similar attributes to a Nicholas Singleton right now. And I'm not saying either of them can be a Miles Sanders or a Saquon Barkley, where they are the feature back, where they go 3 downs, where you can't take them off the field. But they have that luxury where they can have fresh legs all the time because you can cycle them in and out.
There's so much benefit to having fresh legs and a gauntlet of a Big Ten schedule down the pipe. It gets cold. It gets dreary out here. To have 2 young guys who can go play significant reps and, really, again, and to be able to benefit off of one of them maybe having a hot hand one day, it's definitely going to help Penn State's offense. And I think you're on the money when you compare them to Journey Brown and Noah Cain back in 2019. I was sitting there watching the game with Shane Simmons and Fred Hansard, 2 former Penn State players, and they were like, wow, Katron Allen is Noah Cain if he could catch out of the backfield a little more consistently. So I think there's definitely reason to be excited with those 2 kids.
And you mentioned Fred Hansard. He did go on his Twitter and say, I'm feeling an upset today between Penn State and Ohio State.
Fred Hansard has spoken, man. That's how you know
he is confident. Hopefully he's the Swami here today. Let's flip it over to the defense for the whiteout game. Again, this is the Blaise Alexander Family Dealerships Penn State Tailgate Show. I'm Zach Seyko with Aeneas Hawkins, former Penn State defensive lineman, and Jason Lord back in studio. We're out in front of the Bryce Jordan Center on Penn State's campus. The defense saw a little bit of a change, something that's been progressively worked in, but now we saw it in full force. Curtis Jacobs, Abdul Carter on the field at the same time. Aeneas, what changes did they make defensively so that could happen?
So it's as simple as changing things like different fronts, different pressures that you can bring out of certain packages. But again, in a game like Ohio State, you're going to see Coach Franklin and Manny Diaz get Curtis Jacobs and Abdul Carter on the field at the same time, because realistically, they're 2 of their more high-end athletes on that defense. And when you're playing a team like Ohio State with tremendous speed, with Trayvon Hendersons and Marvin Harrison Jr.'s running around, you got to have your athletes on the field as much as possible.
And Curtis Jacobs had 14 total tackles. One of the big changes they did make when they were in the 4-3 base defense. Tyler Elsman, Kobe King rotated in at the Mike linebacker. But something that I was surprised to see, Abdul Carter became the starter in Curtis Jacobs' spot, and they moved Curtis Jacobs back over to the weak side spot where he played next to Brandon Smith and Ellis Brooks just last year. So that was an interesting move there. But when they do go 2 linebackers, as you mentioned, they can do a lot with Abdul Carter and Curtis Jacobs. And with the way that Ohio State operates, Jason, I expect them to run a lot of 4-2-5 today.
I do too, and Zach, I think Aeneas hit it absolutely right on the head. You needed those athletes to compete against what you're going to compete against today, and I think that's a big reason why we saw some of the changes that we saw last week. This is an Ohio State team that is very explosive, very quick as well, and that's a big reason why you're seeing that linebacking core now. Guys like Abdul Carter getting the playing time because you know you're going to need them, and you're going to need that athleticism against a team like Ohio State today. I think Aeneas is spot on.
Before we take a break and send it over to the Coach's Corner, where we hear directly from the man himself, James Franklin, we have select quotes from his weekly press conference that we will play for you and react to what he said, translate what he said for you, the fans. Any other takeaways from that game? Were there any things that you said, you know what, they still need to work on this? I thought they played a complete game. Sean Clifford was Big Ten Offensive Player of the Week as the quarterback. Running backs had a big game, and when we see Penn State struggle, like against a Purdue or against a Michigan, what's lacking? Success on the ground. And I think Singleton and Allen combined for maybe 40 yards in that Michigan game, but both of them were able to get 70 plus. Nicholas Singleton had the 2 touchdowns. So I'd like to see some more consistency, I guess, out of the running game, but that wasn't the problem against Minnesota. Were there any things that, Aeneas, that you said they need to do this in practice, that they need to get right before Ohio State?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing, obviously we saw the tight end step up. We saw the 2 young backs step up. Sean Clifford played one of his best career games after the first quarter. But again, if you want to beat Ohio State today, you're going to have your wide receivers able to stretch the field. We saw Parker Washington do it a little bit, but we're going to need to see more of it today. And a lot of that's going to be contingent on whether or not the run game can get going, because it's going to open up opportunities for play action pass and different type of tweaks that you need to make in order to beat Ohio State's defense.
And for you, Jason, are there anything that you took away from the game and said, I got to watch out for this because Ohio State might be able to exploit it, unless they worked on this week?
No, same exact thing. Stretch the field a little bit more with wide receivers. Have that consistency down the field that you haven't really seen yet. And obviously, it has nothing to do with an individual player, but the start of the game. That's the biggest thing for me, and that's going to be, obviously we get into Ohio State in a little bit. That's going to be the biggest key. I think the aggression, starting early and staying on the gas.
For me, it's still being able to stop the running game. Michigan had no problems running up and down the field, forwards, backwards, side to side, whatever the case, because they allowed 418 rushing yards. Even though they were selling out for the run against Minnesota, I still felt like at times when you had 9 guys, honestly nearly 10, inside the box when the play started to unfold, Mo Ibrahim and Minnesota were able to still move the ball effectively, even though they didn't average that many yards per carry. With the way that Ohio State balances out its offense, if it's Travion Henderson, if it's Mayan Williams, I hope that they were still trying to work on that run defense, because I know at one point that it was top 5, but I got to admit that was a little inflated. And from what I saw against Minnesota, there's still, for me, that has me scratching my head. How is that going to look against the Buckeyes today with what we know that they have offensively? It is the Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships Penn State Tailgate Show. I'm Zach Seyko, Aeneas Hawkins, and Jason Lord joining me here on ESPN Radio 1037 and 1450 and 99.5 The Bus. When we return, the Coach's Corner, we hear from James Franklin next.
FCCB will make it happen for you. If you're looking to renovate your home, tapping into your home equity may be a good way to find funding. A flexible home equity loan allows you to use the amount of funds you need when you need them. And you can choose to lock in the rate on any portion of your balance if you think rates will go up. Call FCCB today at 800-326-9486 or visit us at myfccb.com to learn more. Member FDIC.
Together, we'll get it done. FCCB will make it happen for you.
Did you know every year dozens of startups get their start with Ben Franklin Technology Partners? If you need funding to develop a new product, process, or software application, you need to know Ben Franklin. Our investment capital, business support services, and 10-week Tech Accelerator boot camps can help you get from startup to up and running. To learn more, visit cnp.benfranklin.org or phone the State College office at 814-863-4558. We invest in innovation.
All new Jeeps, all new Rams. It's the Ram Power Days and the Jeep Adventure Days celebration, and only at Blaze Alexander Chrysler Dodge Jeep and Ram Truck of State College. With the new models arriving daily, it's the tailgate package at Blaze Alexander. Because with 0% financing, the highest trade values, and a new selection of inventory arriving daily, log on to blazealexanderjeep.com and put us to the test. And remember, the tailgate package is going on now, and only at Blaze Alexander Chrysler Dodge Jeep and Ram Truck in State College.
Proud sponsor of Penn State Athletics. It takes a special kind of person to thrive in elder care. Maybe that special person is you. If you're a nurse or medical industry professional, Center Care is hiring. And now's a great time for you to join their team. Applications are now being accepted for a variety of positions, many with sign-on bonuses. When you work with Center Care, you'll work with some of the best employees and healthcare administrators in Center County in a brand new, modern, state-of-the-art facility. View all open positions and apply today at centercare.org, an equal opportunity employer.
Now, back to the Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships Tailgate Show on ESPN Radio 103.7 and 99.5 The Bus.
Press conferences are boring, right?
How's everybody doing?
That's why we've set aside the most important stuff for you.
Let's find out what James Franklin had to say in today's Coach's Corner.
Sponsored by Ben Franklin Technology Partners. Every year, dozens of startups launch with Ben Franklin Technology Partners. If you need funding to develop a new product, you need to know Ben Franklin Technology Partners. Visit them online at cmp.benfranklin.org.
And the segment where we hear from James Franklin himself, select quotes from his weekly press conference. In case you missed it, this is a good time to catch up with the most important things that he said from Tuesday. I'm Zach Seyko, joined by Aeneas Hawkins, former Penn State defensive lineman, and Jason Lord back in studio. We will welcome on Chris Mack at 10:10 today. He is the host of the Fan Morning Show from 93.7 The Fan out in Pittsburgh. We'll be calling in to predict some college football games to wrap up our Tailgate Show. And in this segment, after we finish through the Coach's Corner, we are going to break down Ohio State in depth. Look at an overview of the team's strengths and weaknesses. There's a lot of strengths, not so many weaknesses, unfortunately. They are a good football team, and they are ranked number 2 in the country. I say that very reluctantly. But James Franklin had to address that and more. The first quote that we will start with is actually since 2018. It was after that game, the 4th and 5, the draw play with Miles Sanders that didn't work out. Penn State, I think, was leading by as many as 13, maybe 14 in that game. And that was rough to see happen in Beaver Stadium for them to blow that lead with an Urban Meyer coached team. He's over there sitting to my right, if you can believe that, making his anticipated return to Happy Valley. But he made a comment in the postgame saying, well, we are not elite. Ohio State is elite. We need to get to that. It's a very loose translation. But every single year, the media makes it the job to ask him that question again to follow up about that. So here is James Franklin on Penn State and where they are with the elite trajectory.
Yeah, I think obviously a lot of things have changed since then. I think obviously we talked a lot this offseason about, new president and Dr. Ben DePuti and new athletic director and Pat Kraft. That factors into all of this. There's no doubt about it. I think there's things within our program that you look at, whether it's from a development standpoint, whether it's a facility standpoint, whether it's a nutrition standpoint, whether it's recruiting, all the things that you talk about in terms of building a program. I think some areas we have made significant progress in, and others we still have work to do. So I think in a lot of ways we've taken some steps in the right direction, but there's still some areas that we need to get resolved, and that's why I think I've voiced this over and over again, the excitement I have for the leadership that we have in those two positions, and that's with total respect and appreciation for the past as well.
All right, Aeneas, let's break that down because this is important. All that one singular quote from a post-game press conference in 2018 has sparked this entire discussion, maybe a little bit of a debate. So when James Franklin says there's still some things lacking, he didn't specify what that was. Do you know what that might be?
Oh, man, it's a lot of different things, right? I remember that post-game speech that he gave to us and then also to the media about the great to elite transition. If you want to take that step to go compete with teams like Ohio State, it's everything from recruiting, things like housing, now NIL, all of those things are contributing factors. And to be honest, I don't know why we're talking about it this week, because those are things that take time to implement and continue to develop. So obviously not something we'll see the impact of today, but down the line as years progress, I'm sure everybody would like to see.
And it's an all-encompassing thing. It's not just how do you win games on the football field by taking care of all these other aspects. Jason, he brought up Pat Kraft and President Bendapudi. What can they provide to James Franklin that maybe wasn't here in his, he's in his 9th year, so over the past 8 years, what are they able to provide that maybe he didn't have in years past?
Well, I think the biggest thing to me is the support behind the program. Obviously, the funding has got to be there. And you get into Aeneas brought up the NIL. I think that's one of the biggest things right now. That has to be something that has to be backed in a lot of ways by the athletic department as a whole. Yes, you don't want to associate with it in some ways, but in other ways, from a funding perspective, yes, you do. And I think just that backing from both of them and the support that you have and trust of what James Franklin will do with this program and his assistants, obviously, and having his back is the most important thing to me. And was that there previously? Yeah, Sandy Barber was there doing the same thing. Obviously, Eric Barron, same thing, but you still have to have that. To me, that's going to lead to a lot of success. But also, to Aeneas' point, it takes time.
Yes, it certainly does take time. Thanks for taking time with us here on the Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships Penn State Tailgate Show. We are in the Coach's Corner hearing from James Franklin. James was asked about Sean Clifford and why the fans don't appreciate Sean Clifford as much as James Franklin himself does. And here is Coach's answer to that.
Yeah, I'm spending my energy, all of my energy, on getting ready to play a really good Ohio State team. I'm pouring all my energy into loving and supporting my players and staff, and focusing on things that I can control and impact. That's where all my energy is focused on, is supporting my staff, supporting and loving the players, and focusing on getting ready for a really good Ohio State team on offense, defense, and special teams, and those other things. I'm not spending any time on because, to be honest with you, unless you have something for me or somebody else, I don't see how I can impact that.
Okay, so no mention of Sean Clifford there outright, but he does end with that tag. I don't know how I can change that. So this is clearly something that is on any of the fans that do not think of Sean Clifford the way that the coaching staff does, Aeneas.
Yeah, at the end of the day, those coaches are going to put the best players on the field. They give them the best chance to win. I think today is another example of that against Ohio State. I think if we see Drew Allard early, it is telling for sure, but we've seen Sean Clifford to this point, and based on the numbers that he's put up this year, he's handling the game well. He's managed it to the best of his ability, and he's going to have to play his best game today to find a way to win, no doubt about it.
Yeah, you can't be a game manager in this one. I don't know what that looks like. It doesn't necessarily need to be maybe 300 or 400 yards through the air, but it is definitely protecting the football, and Sean Clifford has done that well. 3 interceptions at this point, not even a football on the turf in terms of a fumble. He hasn't turned the ball over that way, but he hasn't even put it on the ground to give it up to chance. And I don't even blame him for the one against Northwestern because that's just a rainy, nasty day. So you had the pick 6 against Purdue, and you have the one against Minnesota that you were off the target. Again, the one against Purdue, that was a miscommunication on the route. So it wasn't like, Sean Clifford threw a bad ball and threw it right to the defense. No, he thought his receiver was going to be here, and he wasn't because it's an option route in this complicated offense.
And even if it was a bad throw, breaking news, ladies and gentlemen, Sean Clifford,
Drew
Allard,
make one or two.
It's going to happen, okay? I don't know if you've watched Tom Brady play at all this season, but there are mistakes being made by quarterbacks everywhere. It's going to happen, okay? So let's not hold him to the standard that's completely unrealistic simply because we want to see the backup quarterback get in and play some ball.
Let's jump back to James Franklin, and this was a question asked about how Penn State is built to compete with the likes of Ohio State. And as you can imagine, this is a lengthy answer, and we'll let it play out, but it goes beyond just winning the X's and O's on the football field. Take a listen.
Is that when you're constructing a roster?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question, and I think that's one of the things that maybe frustrates people, and I'm not talking specific to Penn State, I'm saying in general, there are certain weeks where you feel like you match up better, whether it's scheme, or there's certain weeks whether you match up, whether it's personnel, better than other weeks. There's no doubt about that. You know, you may have an injury at a position or two, and that position is where their strength is. There's a lot of things that factor into it. But to your point, that's the challenge, right? You got to be able to, you got to be able to feel like you can line up and match up from a skill and athleticism perspective with an Ohio State one week, and then say you make it to the Big Ten championship like we did and you play Wisconsin. That's a very different animal that you're getting ready for, and you have to either have the depth and the diversity within your personnel to do it. I think you guys remember, in the past we would have Kevin Givens playing D tackle, and then we may play Wisconsin or someone like that and play Kevin that week at defensive end to get bigger, So either having the personnel to be able to make some moves like that, or obviously some scheme things that you're going to have to do different to put your players in the best position to be successful. No different than these teams that play from a 4-2-5 shell. They're playing with a nickel almost predominantly on the field, and then you go play, a team that's going to try to play smash mouth football, and you've never played with the 3 linebacker on the field. Like I know that was a big discussion Saturday as we had those 3 linebackers on the field. Well, that made a ton of sense against Minnesota and what they do. So I think your point is a really good one, and that's one of the complexities or the subtle things that's challenging, especially in a conference like the Big Ten, where maybe you have a little bit maybe more diversity in how people are built throughout our conference, where a lot of conferences, pretty much everybody's running a similar style throughout the entire conference. So
I understand what he's saying here. Week to week to week, you are going to be different, whereas you might not match up well with a Wisconsin or an Illinois, fundamentally, a Michigan, where they are those kinds of teams. And the Big Ten is really diverse because you have that spread, traditional, what you're seeing more in modern football and college anyway, with Ohio State. The SEC runs that quite a bit. And then you're kind of caught with the Big Ten it's the big uglies, they're going to run at you. And honestly, that wins some football games if you are a truly finesse team. There's a lot to unpack here, Jason, but the question itself was, are you fundamentally built to compete with Ohio State? I'll let you field that one first. Is it yes or no right now? And then how do you even do that? How do you compete with Ohio State fundamentally?
Fundamentally, are you built to compete with Ohio State? Yes. Do you have the same talent and level right now where they're at? I'm not so sure about that. I think you are fundamentally built to be at that point. What goes into that is what you recruit. I know fans a lot of times will look and say, hey, this is the 17th linebacker they've recruited this year. Why? Because that exact answer James Franklin just gave. You've got to have a linebacker that has the ability to be diverse in a lot of ways, to be able to, okay, I match up this way against this opponent. I match up this way against Ohio State. There's the difference right there. So are they fundamentally built? Yes. Are they on the same level yet? I'm not so sure.
And that's the thing. I mean, Ohio State doesn't have to deal with a 7-6 season, a 4-5. I know 2020. Look, 2020 is so different. I think Ohio State had a little bit of luck kind of getting into the situation. They played half of the schedule as everybody else. I think they only played, 6 games that year. Penn State ended up playing 9, not even opting into a bowl game. So they would have played 10 when all was said and done had they gone into that one. And yes, you were on that team. So you know just what kind, that was hell, what that team went through. So I don't want to sit here and say, 2020 is something that's reflective of this Penn State program. But 7-6, like I said, Ohio State hasn't gone through that since, 2009, 2010 maybe, when there was the Jim Tressel selling some championship rings dilemma, the violations, etc. It has been a while since they've dealt with that. So how, from your perspective, Aeneas, is Penn State fundamentally built? How are they fundamentally built to compete with Ohio State?
Yeah, let's focus on the positives. Obviously, Ohio State's wide receiver room is super duper talented, but I look at Penn State's secondary, and I think that's about as close of a matchup as Ohio State is going to have to see in terms of passing the ball. I look at Joey Porter and Jair Brown and Kalen King. All of those guys are NFL talents, and some of those other guys in that room are NFL talents too. But again, you look at Ohio State, okay, they have kids who will be first and second round draft picks who may not play a lot of snaps there. They're on the bench, they're developing, and I think the depth is where Ohio State has been able to surpass a lot of the conference. Coach Franklin talks about having to prepare for different teams. What makes Ohio State so difficult to play is that they do so much so well. They have balance. They can throw the ball. They have 2 backup running backs who can go in and contribute immediately. So Penn State certainly has their hands full, but again, in some positions, they do match up well, and those guys are going to have to play really, really well today.
This is the Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships Penn State Tailgate Show. I'm Zach Seyko with Aeneas Hawkins and Jason Lord. Chris Mack joins us at 10:10 remotely to predict some college football games, including the most important one of the day, Penn State versus Ohio State here at Beaver Stadium at noon. And we are live outside of the Bryce Jordan Center on site, seeing all the Penn State fans and some Ohio State fans. I don't know what they think they're trying to do to me when they flash the Ohio, like that's going to make me feel some type of way.
Well, they're about to get in a fight with me. I'm from Ohio, so I find it offensive. I don't like it.
Penn State and Ohio State, what everyone's been waiting for, the scouting report of this game. Let's start with this. Penn State is a 15.5-point underdog today. It was 14.5. The Vegas lines moved an extra point. The total went from 55 to 60, so people with some money think that this game is definitely going to have a lot of points. James Franklin is 1-7 against Ohio State. That lone win is from 2016, the blocked field goal, 24-21. I have this in my notes because of what we saw. This was, and I feel a little bit better about this now. When they came away from Michigan, did Penn State have an offensive identity? Now has it been found? Jason, what is Penn State's offensive identity after that game against Minnesota?
I think they found it to an extent by adding the tight ends. That helped quite a bit. I'm not so sure they are fully identified just yet. We're going to find that out today. But now the identity is that balance in offense with the addition of the tight ends. I thought that was huge last week, adding them into the game. And that may very well stretch the receivers. As our point earlier, the point Aeneas made, that the receivers have to stretch the field a little more. Adding that tight end helps quite a bit. So the identity is that balance. The identity also is that speed, which they are using effectively.
And one of the other questions that I think is important, because as good as Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen are, they've lost Evan Ford. They lost Keziah Holmes before the regular season even started. And now Kevon Lee is still missing practice. I'm not going to speculate. I anticipate that it is an injury because he had his jersey on. He went through warm-ups last week against Minnesota, but did not play. Aeneas, is running back depth here a concern for you for today and even the remainder of the season?
Yeah, well, if Kevon Lee isn't playing, it is an issue. It's a lot to ask anybody to have to play the entire game by themselves beyond Katron Allen and Nick Singleton. I'm not sure who the backup is. It might be Tank Smith who's back there, and if one goes down, he's in a position where he has to play football now.
He's earned his way onto the team.
No doubt about it. That kid can hoop. But
let's be honest, Kevon Lee is better than Tank Smith.
100%. So, it's going to be challenging. Again, getting Kevon back, whatever he's missing these games and practices for, will be huge because that depth's going to be super important down the line.
So the Buckeyes of Ohio State, they are 7-0 this season, 4-0 in Big Ten play, and they just beat Iowa 54-10. Iowa's got a problem at quarterback. They are playing eighth graders out there at quarterback between Spencer Petras and Alex Padilla. Emeka Egbuka, Julian Fleming, Marvin Harrison Jr. each had a touchdown in that game. C.J. Stroud threw for 286 yards. Ryan Day is the 25th head coach of Ohio State, who took over in 2019. For Urban Meyer is actually seated just about 10, 20 feet away from us. Day is in his fourth full season with a career record of 41-4 and 27-1 in the Big Ten Conference. So I can see why Penn State fans are a little upset that success is over in Columbus and not here in Happy Valley. 6 of Ohio State's first 7 games have been played at home. I think that is going to be a very telling factor today because Ohio State and Michigan State was a little rowdy, but they're not one of the best crowds in the Big Ten, in the country even. we saw what Penn State's crowd was able to do to Minnesota. 6 false starts all the way up until the third quarter. Like, they had 5 in the first half alone. Ohio State hasn't experienced that yet, Aeneas.
Yeah, and until you experience it, you really don't know what you have.
That communication's off by a split second. And that makes the biggest difference.
The biggest difference. I like to call to mind for the Penn State fans going to Iowa last year when Sean Clifford got hurt and some of the communication wasn't right. It completely stalled the offense. So, again, coming here to Beaver Stadium, they haven't played on the road yet. They haven't been tested that way. It's going to be chaotic in there. I'm seeing these people running around right now, bright and early in the morning, already having a great time. It's going to be a long one in there for them.
It is a noon kickoff. Even though this isn't a night game, you are still going to get that rowdy of a crowd today here at Beaver Stadium. Quarterback C.J. Stroud is leading the FBS in passing efficiency at 203.9. He has 28 passing touchdowns. He sits 13th in completion percentage at 70%, 17th in passing yards at 289, and 19th in total passing yards at 2,023. I mean, he's supposed to be the number 1 overall pick in next year's draft. I actually do like him better than Bryce Young. If they're going to go 1 and 2, that is still a very good 1 and 2. And C.J. Stroud, I think maybe it has something to do with his size. I just think that he's able to place the ball a little bit better than Bryce Young. But Bryce Young can create. We've seen him create when plays break down. We haven't seen C.J. Stroud actually do that. C.J. Stroud is not a runner. Even though he can, he chooses not to. Jason, are we going to see C.J. Stroud be forced to tuck in and run? What kind of pass rush will we see from Penn State today? Because everyone's told me, well, C.J. Stroud's never been under pressure. So when you have a calm, cool, clean pocket, you're going to look good every time, and Ohio State's giving him that. So if Penn State's able to get pressure on him, could C.J. Stroud have a bad game?
Absolutely. That's one of the biggest keys of the game, Zach. If Penn State can get pressure on Stroud, this is a much, much different game. I'm not saying the outcome's going to be entirely different, but it's a much different game if they're able to get to Stroud and rattle him. Look at what Notre Dame did in Week 1 in that first half against him. C.J. Stroud was completely off balance, completely not himself. Yes, it was Week 1, but they were able to get to him, and yeah, he was rattled at home. So there's no doubt about it. If you can get to C.J. Stroud, it's a much different game. You don't get to him, he's going to pick you apart, and he's not going to need to run the football. So that pass rush is a major, major key to the game.
And when we get to the injury report, Chop Robinson is someone that was missing against Minnesota. We'll update you on his status. That is the next segment, along with Around the Big Ten. Mayan Williams has been the bell cow because Travion Henderson hasn't been 100%, but you will see them both today. That is a dynamic duo as best as it gets, really. We think that Penn State is spoiled with Singleton and Allen. I mean, Travion Henderson and Mayan Williams pack a punch both in their own right. But then Aeneas, this is something that we've talked about all week, the receiving core that C.J. Stroud has to throw to, right, to make him look even better. Marvin Harrison Jr., that makes you feel old. Marvin Harrison Jr. Emeka Egbuka, Julian Fleming, everybody remembers him from the recruiting class. I think it was, 2018, 2019, where he slighted Penn State to go to Ohio State, and that's all fine and dandy. He's starting to actually come in his own now, year 4 with the Buckeyes. It's taken him some time because Jackson Smith-Njigba has been out, and he's been missing time, and part of the injury report, we'll get an update on him as well. But I just named 4 guys who could all be number 1s anywhere else in the country. How does Penn State try to limit all of that? Yeah, they have the guys to do it, but how do they do it?
No doubt. I think it helps if Joey Porter Jr. can absolutely cross one of those names off a list by himself. But I think the thing that's really going to help is if the pass rush and the secondary play can work together. It's a lot easier to cover for 2-3 seconds than it is for 5 to 7 on a bunch of NFL talent. So again, we talk about C.J. Stroud being effective. All of those things are going to contribute. If they want to stop those receivers and really slow them down to give themselves a chance to win, it's going to take Penn State's D-line getting home and our corners playing their best football.
And Cade Stover, the tight end, he's kind of somebody that gets lost in the shuffle here, and hopefully Penn State doesn't lose him as well, because if Penn State's secondary is able to key in on these receivers and limit them in any sort of capacity, Cade Stover, that might open up a day for him, and the linebackers are going to be tested if C.J. Stroud's going to target him. Jason, we talked about a lot of strengths for Ohio State. Are there any weaknesses? Maybe they aren't necessarily weaknesses, but stuff that they aren't traditionally as good at this season.
This season only? Yeah, they haven't played on the road that much. That, to me, is the biggest weakness. This is their first major road test. That's the weakness that sticks out to me above all. The other weakness is you talk about The running game, I'm not so sure that running game right now is where it needs to be. Obviously, you had the loss in the beginning of the year with Pryor. I thought that was huge, being out for the year. That hurt their depth with Evan Pryor going down. But Henderson's really not. He's been banged up. He's not
100%.
that you're looking at. The thing you got to be wary of, obviously, is Igbokwe in the backfield, just like Ohio State always does. They have that receiver that can kill you with a 67-yard run. But I think, to me, that's major weaknesses. The biggest one for me being they have not been tested on the road at all this year. This is the first time, really, they're going to have that opportunity to prove themselves. That's the biggest weakness for me. They've not shown it.
Aeneas, to go off of that, is there anything else that Jason might not have added? Because I think that being battle tested on the road is important. I mean, this is a Beaver Stadium environment. It's not like they are going to another quiet environment, maybe in Illinois, for example, or whatever. And you haven't experienced this since 2018. There are other than maybe a few guys that have stuck around on this roster, there really aren't a lot of veterans that say, you know what, I remember back in 2018 when they really brought the noise. Like, no one has that experience other than a Ryan Day.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think one thing that may be going untold, I'm not super duper convinced with Ohio State's linebacking core. I would love if Penn State could find creative ways to make mismatches with the tight ends, with the running backs in the passing game to try to expose them there. I also don't think their secondary is necessarily playing at the highest level right now. I know they have talent all over the place, but they have not shown me enough yet. And I don't think they've been tested like this yet.
And Jim Knowles, who was brought in to be that defensive coordinator from Oklahoma State, does need good secondary play. It is really contingent on how the back end of the defense performs. And if they are lacking, that Penn State has a chance to expose them if they are not on point today. This is the Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships Penn State Tailgate Show with myself, Zach Seyko, Aeneas Hawkins, and Jason Lord. When we return, the injury report. Plus, we have the keys for Penn State and Ohio State coming up soon, and we'll look around the Big Ten as well. Injury report is next. Who's in, who's out on ESPN Radio 103.7 and 99.5, The Bus.
Hey, man, want to get together, watch the game this weekend?
Yeah, dude. Just come on over. I got that huge TV.
Nah, let's go out. I know a place with even bigger TVs, plus free beer, and Central PA's finest adult entertainment.
Sounds like you want to go to the end zone.
The End Zone. Come for the game, stay for the entertainment. Visit endzoneshowclub.com or call to book your free shuttle.
Free beer available to anyone 21 and older on the indoor beer patio, regardless of cover charge. Original ID is required.
Hi, this is Corey Confer from Joel Confer Toyota in State College. The best new cars make the best used cars. That's why you need to look at a Toyota certified vehicle. All certified Toyotas come with a 7-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty, plus a 12-month, 12,000-mile bumper-to-bumper warranty, and 7-year roadside assistance. There are special interest rates as low as 3.99% up to 60 months to qualified buyers. See our complete inventory 24/7 at joelconfer.com. And remember, good things happen in the community when you buy local.
Blaze Alexander Chevrolet Buick of Phillipsburg has trucks in stock. We have 24 2022 Silverados and 7 2023 Silverados on the way. During the month of October, receive $1,000 worth of GM accessories or a $500 rebate with your new truck purchase. Hurry while supplies last. Reserve yours today where you'll find the lowest price guaranteed. And only at Blaze Alexander Chevrolet in Phillipsburg. Taking the deals the other guys won't. Find new roads.
Proud sponsor of Penn State Athletics.
Hey, sports fans, did you bring cigars for your tailgate? We bet you didn't bring any handmade Nittany and Letterman cigars. Visit your cigar den in Monte Cristo Lounge in downtown State College. They have more than 400 cigar choices, including the popular line of handmade Nittany and Letterman cigars. Stop in and see for yourself why alumni from all over return to your cigar den each year and relive the spirit of their alma mater. Now open Sundays from noon to 5, your cigar den in Monte Cristo Lounge, 127 South Fraser Street on Calder Way behind the corner room downtown.
Now, back to the Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships Tailgate Show on ESPN Radio 103.7 and 99.5 The Bus. Who's in and who's out? Let's take a look at the injury report. Sponsored by Stocker Chevrolet. Your new Chevy is waiting for you at Stocker Chevrolet. Home of the great guy and the Stocker Advantage. Stocker Chevrolet, 701 Benner Pike in State College.
And we do have some breaking news in this segment. When we get to Ohio State's side of it, we will begin with the Nittany Lions of Penn State being the home team. We're outside of the Bryce Jordan Center today. Thanks for joining us on the radio, on ESPN Radio and 99.5 The Bus. Penn State, Landon Tangwall, Kevon Lee were non-participants at practice. Nick Dawkins was actually not seen at practice as well, and that's important for offensive line depth as Dawkins has rotated in frequently to begin the season, so you don't want to see anybody go down and then you don't have him available to turn to. Tangwall's in that position as well, even though Hunter Norzad has been, I think, an anchor at left guard since coming back from his own injury and stepping in for Tangwall. It hasn't missed a beat on that side. Caden Wallace, even though he's not in this report, I think needs to be listed because he left that game against Minnesota, did not come back. Keandre Lambert-Smith did not play at all last week, even though he tried to give it a go against Michigan. He was suited up. And like I said, Kevon Lee being a non-participant in his practice, again, not being seen when the media is there, leads me to believe that he will not be available for today's game as well. That's everybody who is questionable. We know that Smith Vilbert's out for the season due to personal reasons, off the field reasons. We won't speculate. Now, Chop Robinson missed Minnesota, but he did participate at practice. Aeneas, how big is that to get him back against a game like Ohio State today?
Yeah, pass rush is Penn State's only way to win. They have to have it. It's necessary. C.J. Stroud is a high elite-level quarterback going number 1 overall in the draft probably next year. You got to find ways to make him uncomfortable. Having Chop back, he's Penn State's best pass rusher to this point of the year, is super-duper crucial, and I think it's going to be a huge boost to their pass rush.
For Ohio State, we have a bit of breaking news. It seems like Jackson Smith-Njigba, who was a preseason Heisman contender, is out for the day. It was on a snap count last week, snap count limit. It looks like he is going to be out today, according to the Ohio State media. Now, Ohio State, you brought up that the secondary is a little lacking in Aeneas, and that might be the case because they are banged up. Cameron Brown missed his 3rd game in 4 weeks, and safety Court Williams is out with a potential long-term injury, and those are guys that factor into the defensive backs. But they did get Jordan Hancock back last week after he missed the first 6 weeks of the season due to an injury. Secondary's thin based on just that. Jason, will that have an impact on today's game? Because it seems like Ohio State's been able to get by with the limited resources they do have in the secondary.
Yeah, they have a lot of depth, so I think it won't have a large effect. But you look at Ohio State's D-line. To Aeneas' point, the pass rush for Penn State, to me, absolutely most critical. But for Ohio State, if they can get a pass rush, it's going to make that secondary look a lot better no matter who's back there. They don't get that pass rush, then those injuries get a little bit more magnified. So on paper, is it a huge deal? No. I think they have the depth to do it. But if they can't get the pressure on Sean Clifford, it becomes a much bigger deal.
That is the injury report. We're going to take another time out here on ESPN Radio and 99.5 The Bus when we come back. The keys for Penn State, the matchups that will be most important today for both the Nittany Lions and the Buckeyes, and we'll look around the Big Ten before we welcome on special celebrity guest Chris Mack from 93.7 The Fan in Pittsburgh. It's the Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships Penn State Tailgate Show.
W-I-K. There's no need to choose, there's only one place. W-I-K. You can buy it by the keg or buy it by the case. W-I-K. When you want it cold and you need it fast. W-I-K. We're gonna help you make good times last. W-I-K. So when you're driving by, just drive on through. We'll even put it in your car for you at W-I-K.
1321 East College Avenue.
Did you know every year dozens of startups get their start with Ben Franklin Technology Partners? If you need funding to develop a new product, process, or software application, you need to know Ben Franklin. Our investment capital, business support services, and 10-week Tech Accelerator boot camps can help you get from startup to up and running. To learn more, visit cnp.benfranklin.org or phone the State College office at 814-863-4558. We invest in innovation.
Do you enjoy the warmth of a wood fire but don't have time to cut and split firewood? Then you need to call Metzler Forest Products, just 1 mile south of Reedsville. Metzler Forest Products sells assorted hardwoods in various lengths, and they also offer ready-to-burn, kiln-dried firewood that is seasoned, USDA certified, and is bug and pest free. Contact Metzler Forest Products today to arrange to pick up or have a load of firewood delivered right to your home. Call Metzler Forest Products at 717-667-3600. That's 717-667-3600, or visit MetzlerForestProducts.com.
We admit the curb appeal of Beer Belly's beverage is a little limited, but for what you lose in closet space, you gain in awesome space. Lagers facing east, imports facing west, and good times available in every square foot. But unless you're one of the more than 500 labels we carry every day, you'll have to settle for the couch. Beer Belly's beverage. It's where beer lives. Find us on Facebook or at beerliveshere.com.
Now, back to the Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships Tailgate Show on ESPN Radio 103.7 and 99.5 The Bus. What's it going to take to win the game?
Let's find out by looking at today's key matchups. Sponsored by your Cigar Den and Monte Cristo Lounge.
State College's source for premium cigars, pipes, tobacco, and accessories with 2 smoking lounges and the home of the Nittany Blue and White Cigars, 127 South Fraser Street in State College.
Key matchups for this one. And the keys to the game for Penn State and Ohio State. Ohio State number 2 in the country, Penn State number 13. Noon kickoff in Beaver Stadium. I'm Zach Seyko, joined by former Penn State defensive lineman Aeneas Hawkins and Jason Lord back in studio. Aeneas, because this is something that you pointed out all week, it's probably the most exciting matchup that you've wanted to see all season long, and now it is here. What is that matchup, and how could it pay dividends for either side today?
Yeah, to me, it's Penn State's secondary versus Ohio State's receiving core, and more specifically, I think it's Joey Porter Jr. versus Marvin Harrison Jr. Obviously, grew up as a kid rooting for both of their dads, the legends.
Yeah.
But again, today, got to see that matchup. I think especially with Jackson Smith, Najibba out, I think it's even more important. It gives Penn State a real opportunity to slow that receiving core down and make Ohio State's offense one-dimensional. And if they want to win the game, it's going to be necessary.
And the Columbia Dispatch out of Ohio did confirm, along with ESPN National, that Jackson Smith-Njigba is out for this game with a hamstring injury. Jason, with that being said, the wide receivers against Penn State's secondary, what matchup are you looking at in today's game?
To quote the great Steve Jones when he gives the weather report to Jack Ham, it's a layup. It's Porter and Harrison. No doubt about it. Absolutely. If Joey Porter can make Marvin Harrison not necessarily disappear, but limit what he's able to do, that's a major difference in this game. So, yeah, to me, the key matchup, without question, as Aeneas put it, it's that secondary going up against Ohio State's receivers. If Joey Porter Jr. can limit one of them, and Marvin Harrison Jr. preferably, that's going to make this a much different task for C.J. Stroud. Obviously, he's got weapon after weapon on that offense, but you can make Harrison Jr. disappear for the most part and limit him. That's going to play a major role in this game. So the key matchup to me, there is no bigger one than that. It is that secondary against the receivers, and it's Joey Porter Jr. against Marvin Harrison Jr.
As much as I agree with both of you, I will take it a step and go a little meta here. I think it is Manny Diaz's defensive play calling against Ohio State's offense. We saw Manny Diaz get out-coached the first time this season against Michigan. You have to, when there is something to criticize, you do have to point it out, because I think Manny Diaz has brought some new life into this defense that Brent Pry was able to manage so well for so long. He leaves, and Penn State's defense didn't miss a beat up until Michigan. And if Manny Diaz is going to lose that head-to-head coaching battle with Ohio State's offense, I don't know that. I want to see something new. I want to see some added wrinkles. And I think you will see that. I don't think Penn State can get by with just what they've shown with the man blitzes and man coverage. You might see a little more zone today, especially because even with Jackson Smith-Njigba out, frankly, they haven't needed him to this point in the season with the other receivers that they have, Martin Harrison Jr. in particular, who's tied for second with 10 receiving touchdowns. Let's look around the Big Ten real quick before we welcome on Chris Mack after our commercial break. Around the Big Ten is sponsored by Center Care, Inc. When you work at Center Care, you'll work with some of the best employees and healthcare administrators in Center County in a modern, state-of-the-art facility. Apply today at centercare.org. We know Penn State and Ohio State playing today. at noon in Beaver Stadium. At 2:30, Rutgers is at Minnesota. See how the Golden Gophers can bounce back. That is definitely a get-right spot against the Scarlet Knights. Illinois is going on the road against Nebraska, and that just might be one of our games that we are picking from in the slate. 3:30 kickoff there. Also a 3:30 kickoff, Northwestern against Iowa. Which team can play uglier and somehow not lose? That's really what that game's about today. And then Michigan will love this one. 7:30 kickoff. Michigan State is going to Ann Arbor to play the Wolverines. They do not have to travel far from East Lansing to Ann Arbor. And that will be the primetime game tonight on ABC. It is our prediction segment. Let's see how many we can get right next with our special celebrity guest, Chris Mack of 93.7 The Fan, here on ESPN Radio 103.7 and 99.5 The Bus.
You've probably noticed a lot of changes in downtown State College over the years, but the Tavern Restaurant is still there, serving up the same great experience locals and Penn State fans alike have come to know and love since 1948. Enjoy your dinner and drinks in their recently renovated building, complete with a bit of Penn State history and a great view of Old Main. Going strong for over 70 years. Visit the historic Tavern Restaurant in downtown State College today. Go to thetavern.com for hours, menus, and to reserve your table.
Hey folks, Gina Corey Stocker from Stocker Chevrolet. The leaves are starting to change and the temperature is starting to drop. What a great time to celebrate truck season. The Chevrolet Equinox earned the 2022 J.D. Power Top Rank Compact SUV, and this month you can get up to $1,200 off. And our Silverado 2.7 1500 LTD has up to $750 off, plus a $1,000 accessory allowance. And remember, only at Stocker Chevrolet do you get the Stocker Advantage of the purchase of any new vehicle that comes with oil changes and a whole lot more. So come on down to Stocker Chevrolet or visit us online at StockerChevrolet.com. Work your whole deal and we'll deliver the car to you.
Recycling at Beaver Stadium is as easy as blue and white. All glass and plastic bottles and metal cans go into the blue bags, and paper and trash in the white bags. Be sure to leave the area like you found it, like a true Nittany Lion fan. Thanks for recycling from your friends at the Center County Recycling and Refuse Authority.
Hi, I'm Matt Nobby, General Manager of Bobby Rahal Honda of State College. Football season is back, and just like your favorite team, we like to win. Our goal is to win your trust with an honest, hassle-free car buying experience. And with our superior service after the sale, we hope to win you as a customer for life. Stop by our showroom on West College Avenue and get a win of your own with a great new Honda car, truck, van, or SUV. Or browse our selection of new and used vehicles online at BobbyRahal.HondaOfStateCollege.com.
Get to know the X's and O's. Tune in for the key matchups on Saturdays during the Penn State Tailgate Show. Sponsored by Your Cigar Den and Monte Cristo Lounge. Now, back to the Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships Tailgate Show on ESPN Radio 103.7 and 99.5 The Bus. Break out the crystal ball. The guys will make their predictions for Penn State in today's college football games with the help of a celebrity guest. Hopefully, they aren't too far off. Sponsored by Metzler Forest Products Landscape Center. Metzler Forest Products Landscape Center in Reedsville is for all your landscaping and firewood needs. Get your project started by going online to MetzlerForestProducts.com.
And that celebrity guest is Chris Mack from the Fan Morning Show of 93.7 The Fan in Pittsburgh. I'm Zach Seyko with Aeneas Hawkins and Jason Lord, my co-hosts on today's Tailgate Show. We are predicting some college football games with Chris Mack, our celebrity guest. Chris, thanks so much for your time on this beautiful Pennsylvania morning.
Yeah, it's gorgeous out there. Zach, Aeneas, Jason, thanks for having me. But clearly the bar has been lowered way too low for what qualifies as a celebrity if I'm on the show this week. But thank you for having me. I'll accept the task at hand.
Hey, from what I've read, and I know you're being humble here, but from what I've read, the Fan Morning Show is ranked one of the best morning shows in all of the country. So for what that's, if you've seen that article, actually.
I have. I'm gonna take the humble route, okay?
Well, Chris Mack is joining us, a Penn State graduate himself, out with 93.7 The Fan, manning the morning show, and you follow the Pittsburgh Steelers. You follow all the Pittsburgh sports. And the Panthers, I brought them into the conversation today when we pick our college games, just out of respect today. But I wanted to ask, being around all of the Pittsburgh sports, and I know this isn't relative to Penn State, but for you, seeing what the Steelers have had to offer and Kenny Pickett, what is the state of that team right now 2 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. I mean, it hasn't been a good start for the rookie quarterback.
No, that wouldn't by fire, but I think it has to go up from here, right? It's why plugging him in during the 4-game fan meeting I thought it made a little bit of sense at the time because it can't possibly get any cover. Look back after the schedule. We'll see if Mack Canada is the offensive coordinator for the long term here. The long term should be the end of the year. A lot of people believe that another 4 before we get the out Philly could be his outing. But Kenny Pickett, this is exactly the kind of season you're going to have. You're trying to bring in a quarterback, and again, baptize him by fire. You find out what he is. You've got the rest of the team to find out what he is. And by the end of the year, you know, this guy is going to lead you into the post-Ronald Gardner era, or you see just another dude. And so far, the person did, unfortunately, his brother here and there, another dude.
And I can honestly say, you know, at Penn State, it is really split down the middle with Steelers and Eagles fans. The Eagles are undefeated, the last unbeaten team in the NFL, and the Steelers are what they are this year. And well, there might be more Philly
Eagles fans.
There might be more Philly fans now that I say that. Steeler fans need to be quiet and go into hiding this season anyway. Yeah. Philadelphia's got a lot going on. No, it's weird. It is really weird. I'm a Steelers fan too. I don't know how much I want to brag. Let me ask about T.J. Watt because I didn't think he was going to come off of the IR this soon, and he is expected to play on a pitch count on Sunday. What do you know about that from what you've heard from your sources?
I mean, it's surprising on one hand because I think I might would have been let him sit out by get him close to 100% spot. I understand why Mike Tomlin was going to find a back in though, because they've won one football game and T.J. Watt in the line. That's it. They want to get that's all. So that being said, they need to plug T.J. Watt back in if they're going to do any light little fillers in those 5. And Mike Tomlin likes to point to that no season part of his resume. So maybe it's that avenue for trying to turn things around in Philly. I would not have done it, but we'll see. I don't know if that's enough in Philly. That's certainly a lot enormous up.
I agree. I think that T.J. Watt is being rushed back, but they clearly know something that you and I might not know here. But that is my opinion. I agree wholeheartedly here. One final question about the Steelers and now the Eagles, and this will appeal to everybody around Penn State as there is the split fan base here. The Steelers and the Eagles, what are your expectations for that game as Pittsburgh is a 10-point underdog against the Eagles in Philly? How do you think that game will unfold?
Well, I think it's going to be a lot more than they do in the offense because they're struggling to get on track. I do think there's a soft middle. Maybe Eagles can be attacked. If Canada's offense is going to do what it hasn't done all year, again, look at Cincinnati, at times Miami, Pat Bradford down the field, take a little bit on the field. They do have a chance, I think, to keep it closer than that double-digit spread. But I don't think off the line upset. In fact, I think they'll cover. I think James Burton's going to have a big day. But he's weapons on the offensive side of the ball. And even with T.J. Watt snap count, I don't think it's enough to build on the offense.
Yeah, it doesn't. I don't know that it will make enough of a difference unless he is really able to ball out like we've seen him do in takeover games. But just being hampered by that pec injury, it's really tough to come back from. Chris Mack, the fan morning show host of 93.7 The Fan out in Pittsburgh, is joining us. He is a Penn State grad. And there are some Penn State players playing in that Steelers-Eagles game on Sunday tomorrow. Miles Sanders, Marcus Allen, Pat Freiermuth, as Chris had mentioned. And we are talking college football games. We brought on Chris to help us predict some key games around college football. And being that we have an early morning show today, we do have the full slate to pick from, unlike last week where we only had Trace McSorley select from about 3 games that had some, I guess, some relative interest. I wasn't going to have him pick a Mack game at night. No, that's just not fair. It's unfair. So, Chris, we do have a good slate. And let's start with some ACC teams that the Pitt Panthers are familiar with. Notre Dame and Syracuse. Well, Notre Dame is independent, but they have played in the ACC quite a bit over the past couple of years. Does number 16 Syracuse hold strong against the Irish? Who do you like to win?
Syracuse, because I think people are writing them off. That was actually a very close loss on the road at Valley last week. The quarterback change.
It's only a 6-point victory for Clemson. I think Syracuse, I mean, they're not national title contenders, sure, but they are legit. Gino Baker is doing something right there. There's tempo on the offensive side of the ball. And look, if you rip away the Golden Dome helmet and the name, look at Notre Dame's resume. And losses to Marshall and Stanford, you'd never pick them on the road. So I'm going with Syracuse.
All right, Jason, Syracuse or Notre Dame?
I'm going the opposite way, man. I'm picking them on the road. I think Notre Dame pulls the upset here. Syracuse is a great team. I think Notre Dame plays better on the road, actually. Yes, that loss to Stanford wasn't pretty. I thought they played Ohio State hard week 1, knocked off North Carolina. For some reason, this team's a little bit different on the road. Nearly won in Death Valley a couple of years ago, nearly won in Georgia. I'm taking Notre Dame to knock off Syracuse here.
Aeneas?
Yeah, I'm going to take Notre Dame here, too. I think Syracuse close loss. It was just that, a close loss. But sometimes close losses can be indicative of deeper-rooted issues that are beginning to show themselves. I think Notre Dame figures it out, and Marcus Freeman gets it done on the road.
I would go with Syracuse because I've gathered that they have one of the better home environments in all of the country. I think the Orange, they played Clemson very tough. I mean, Clemson is for whether people consider them or not, they are in the top 10, they are in the top 5, and Syracuse played them very well until they made the change at quarterback. I'll go Syracuse here to win. Number 9, Oklahoma State. At number 22, Kansas State. I mean, Adrian Martinez has really turned it around for the Wildcats. Can they upset the Cowboys at home? Chris Mack, what do you think?
Martinez, a game-time decision.
Oh.
A play-in game for the Cowboys and the Wildcats. Oklahoma State, I think, according to ESPN Analytics, has an 82% chance to go to the Big 12 title game with a win today. And Mike Gundy, whether you like him or not, drives in these spots last 6 years. In games, the spread is 3.5 points either way. 14-3, and he does really well in the road in those situations as well. So I think Oklahoma State basically rubber stamp their trip to the Big 12 title game with a win today.
All right, Jason, Oklahoma State or Kansas State, especially given the fact that we don't know the availability of Martinez.
Yeah, and Oklahoma State's been battle-tested really through much of this year. They've been through some tough games. To me, I think they have a lot to prove still yet on the year, but I'm going Oklahoma State in this game. I think Gundy's going to have them ready to go.
Aeneas?
Yeah, I agree with Jason and Chris. I think Oklahoma State finds a way to get it done. The players and that staff are locked in on a potential Big 12 title game. I think you're going to get their best product.
All right, I will go with Oklahoma State here. They were banged up and somehow able to do it against Texas, so I like that. Whether they are fully healthy or not, and knowing about Kansas State's quarterback, I will go Pokes as well. Let's go to the SEC. Number 19, Kentucky. At number 3, Tennessee. I mean, the Volunteers, they beat Alabama. They are riding high. Will Levis, former Penn State quarterback's got to go into a tough environment. I really don't like Kentucky in this matchup just because they've had trouble protecting Levis. But, Chris Mack, what say you?
Yeah, I mean, he's had a week to get a little healthier, though, so I keep an eye out for that. And Kentucky's been able to put down ball quarterback. Remember back to the game against the Gators, they held in for 204 yards on the ground. They only give up 12.7 scramble yards per game, so they might be able to limit Hendon Hooker just a bit. He gets Cedric Tillman back. I don't know. I think the point spread in this one is probably a little too big for me, but I do think Tennessee ends up pulling out the win and basically moving on to an SEC East championship game. Maybe a bit of a college football playoff play-in game this week against Georgia.
It's nice to see some parity down there in the SEC. Jason, Tennessee or Kentucky?
Chris stole my thunder. Old Rocky Top's thinking old SEC championship and old playoff. I don't think there's any doubt about it. Tennessee has had some tough games this year. They've risen to the occasion, played tough games, and on the road and at home. I like Tennessee in this game. I think they're the real deal.
Aeneas?
I've been rooting for Tennessee. I'm a Tim Banks guy. I'm happy to see him having success, but I am no fool, and I'm not betting against Will Levis, man. Will Levis is going to show up and play ball today. I know that Kentucky team is motivated. I got them pulling the upset.
Oh wow! As much as I like Will Levis as a prospect, this Kentucky team is different from last year, and they haven't been able to hold up. And it's a team sport as much as Will Levis can do by himself at quarterback. I will go Tennessee here. If this was an away game, maybe it is different. Let's jump to Pitt. Out of respect for Chris Mack, the host of the Fan Morning Show in Pittsburgh, Pitt is actually only a 3-point underdog at a number 21 North Carolina team. Can the Panthers get it done?
I don't know, Zach. I think the sooner Pitt admits that maybe the Keaton Slovis experiment isn't going to work the way they expected it to, the better. I mean, luckily they've got Izzy Abanikanda, and they can single-handedly throw the offense on his shoulders if they need to. And UNC has a terrible defense, so I think this will be a tight game. But Pitt never won a Chapel Hill, and Drake May is just an absolute stud, averaging 326 passing yards a game, second in the country to only C.J. Stroud. So give me the Tar Heels.
All right, Jason.
Yeah, I think this game's going to be a shootout, but I like North Carolina in the shootout. That's really the factor. This will be a close game, but I like UNC.
Aeneas?
Yeah, I like Pittsburgh to win. I'm going to have a hard time picking UNC after watching App State just absolutely score at will at the beginning of the year. I don't think you improved that much, that drastically over the course of the season. I think Pitt finds a way.
Well, that's just it. UNC, I don't know. Their defense is a wet paper bag. They really can't stop anyone. So, yes, there's going to be a lot of points. Drake May is really good at quarterback. He's going to be a nice prospect one day, but the Pitt quarterback situation, I don't know how your offense can keep up with UNC's, so give me the Tar Heels. Now, the game that here in Happy Valley matters to everyone the most. Chris Mack from 93.7 The Fan joining us as our celebrity guest. We are at the home stretch of our show. Ohio State, number 2 in the country at number 13 Penn State. And Chris, I will want an official score prediction for this one as well. The Nittany Lions and the Buckeyes, who do you like? Why? And what is your final score?
Well, look, I would be silly to not bring up what everybody has been talking about all week, what I've heard you talk about, Mack, on the Locked On podcast, what I heard you talk about with Aeneas the other day, what Jason brought up earlier. It's all about strength against strength, irresistible force, immovable object. Ohio State receiving core, Penn State secondary. And I love this. I don't know if you guys have seen this number or not. Joey Porter Jr., Taylor King, as primary coverage defenders, have allowed just 143 passing yards on 44 attempts. They are studs. We know that. And we know that Jackson Smith and Jigba is not going to play today. Yes, Amika Ibuka and Martin Harrison Jr. have put together 17 touchdowns, 1,300 yards. I tend to think that when you take two great units like this and put them up against each other, the offensive side always comes out on top because that's just the trend of football these days, more offense. Unless Manny Diaz, and this is a great point you brought up a moment ago as well, Zach, unless Manny Diaz can dial up something different than what we've seen all year, I fear that we get, especially early in the third quarter, similar to what we saw against Michigan, a feeling of, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're in this, and then a couple of quick Ohio State scores, and before we know it, we're down 2 touchdowns, and we're chasing the game late, and it gets away from us. So unfortunately, final score, I'm going to go Buckeyes 31, Penn State 17.
All right, Jason, what is your pick?
Yeah, just too much talent for me for Ohio State. I like Ohio State 31-20 in this game.
Okay, not as many points. Aeneas?
Yeah, I love this game for Ohio State if they're in Columbus. This is Beaver Stadium. It's going to get loud. Sean Clifford is in his 6th year. He's an Ohio kid. He wants this win bad. Oh, yeah. And I think Penn State's front seven is going to play their best ball yet. They're going to be turned up for this game and eager to prove themselves. I think also having Jackson Smith-Njigba out against a Penn State secondary that's proven to play high-level football all year. The tight ends getting involved. Give me Penn State 38-35.
Penn State with the upset today. Aeneas, I almost don't want to give my pick because you should have went last. I'm going to whisper it because that just set the show off on the right note as we turn it over to Learfield in just a second. I'll go Ohio State 37, Penn State 27. I just don't see them outscoring the Buckeyes. Chris Mack of 93.7 The Fan in Pittsburgh. Chris, thanks so much. I know you're rooting for Penn State as a graduate today. Thank you so much for your time on the show.
Thanks, guys. That's one today.
All right, thank you. And that is precisely what we're going to do now is turn it over to the Learfield Network. Steve Jones, Jack Ham, Brian Tripp. They're going to have their pregame preview, interview James Franklin, and then kickoff at noon. Number 2 Ohio State versus number 13 Penn State. Folks, enjoy it. And let's see how loud that crowd can be in Beaver Stadium today. Thanks for joining us on ESPN Radio and 99.5 The Bus.
Thanks for listening to the Penn State Tailgate Show, sponsored by Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships. Up next, Steve Jones, Jack Ham, Brian Tripp, and Roger Corey take you through their preview of the Nittany Lions on your home for Penn State football. ESPN Radio 103.7 and 1450 WQWK State College and 99.5 The Bus WBUS Center Hall.